to surrender. And the poem describes the way in which the great boulders came down from the sky into the courtyard, crashing down, causing all sorts of damage, mayhem inside. The minute the casualties started, the garrison simply surrendered. So it wasn't the knights, it wasn't a great act of chivalry to capture this castle, it was the work of the experts, the engineers.
It's difficult to tell. I mean, that one's obviously got a...
Joining Hugh Kennedy in his quest to build a trebuchet is mechanical engineer Wayne Neal, a professor from Virginia Military Institute.
The golden section. This one actually is 1 to 2, and this is 1 to 3.
Wayne will design the trebuchet. He is basing it on a picture he found in a 13th century Spanish manuscript. The illustration gives no idea of the true scale of the trebuchet, because the artist has made the machine smaller than the soldiers standing next to it.
If the drawing isn't practical from all points of view, you begin to wonder about all the other points of view. It may be that the things they have got in the right proportion they did by accident. Even an artist like Leonardo will draw a plan for something that's totally impractical, but it indicates how it could be made. That's all, it indicates how it could be made.
With the manuscript as a starting point, Wayne uses a combination of engineering theory and trial and error to come up with a working model.
All right, I'll cock this and you get the camera ready. We'll see if we can get
the prototype looks promising to Marcus Brandt, a carpenter who will help Wayne build the trebuchet. But there's a problem. The model rocks dangerously. This would be a serious flaw in a full-size trebuchet with several tons in motion.
The machine basically tends to want to tip forward. As that weight comes down, it wants to drop straight down. So it tends to pull the machine forward, making, in this case, tip.
To resolve the problem, Wayne re-examines the medieval illustrations of this type of trebuchet. He's struck by the fact that many have wheels, so he decides to build a new model. Not only do wheels eliminate the tendency for it to tip over, the movement also boosts the trebuchet's performance.
Shoot away, come on.
Hugh doubts that wheels will make a trebuchet throw farther, so he insists on a demonstration. For the first throw, Hugh holds down the model. The projectile travels 20 feet.
Now let's try it with letting it loose.
Letting it loose, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's certainly better, isn't it? Yes.
I don't have enough room.
When the trebuchet is allowed to roll, the missile goes an extra 10 feet. Why? The falling counterweight drives the trebuchet forward. Like a pitcher stepping forward, this adds momentum to the throw. The forward motion also permits the counterweight to drop further in a straighter line. The closer the counterweight follows this optimal path, the more energy it captures for throwing.
What I find odd is the idea about it moving and having to move in order to give more energy to the missile, I would have thought was, on the face of it, nonsense. But obviously if Wayne's tried it and it goes further, then you can't be argued with.
Now that Wayne has confidence in his model, the project moves to Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands for a full-scale test. The trials will take place in the shadow of Castle Urquhart, which may have been besieged with similar weapons during Edward I's Scottish campaigns 700 years ago. Wayne and Hugh arrive at Castle Urquhart to inspect the timber that is delivered by barge. As in the Middle Ages, heavy-duty English oak is the choice for building the carriage and trestles. But the throwing arm will be made from a more lightweight wood, Douglas fir. Wayne calculates that a tree trunk of at least 2 feet in diameter is needed to withstand the stresses of hurling 250-pound balls.
How about this one, right? It's the right size, yeah. That would be the right diameter. It'd be a shame to cut that down, wouldn't it? Yes.
Let's get the chainsaw and whack it down.
There you go.
right. Go. Get out of it. Haul away.
After it is floated across Loch Ness, the log is quickly hauled ashore.
You're okay.
Work immediately begins on hewing it into an 8-sided throwing arm. The next job is to assemble the base. 40 carpenters, mainly from the United States, but also from Britain and Germany, have volunteered to spend their vacation here. They're all timber framers who specialize in traditional construction techniques. Without nails, they connect large pieces of wood using mortise and tenon joints.
Beautiful, beautiful. 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
While the timber framers immerse themselves in medieval methods, Wayne employs the tools of a modern engineer to check and recheck his design. In particular, he's hoping that the wheels will give him the same boost in performance as they did on the model.
Spin it on. Spin it on.
Up at the target wall, work is almost complete. The wooden structures on top are called hoardings. They provided additional protection for defenders during a siege. Attackers would build similar barriers to protect the trebuchet team from arrow fire.
Well, this is the target wall that we've got for the trebuchets, a modern reproduction of a castle wall. It's a pretty good reproduction, I think. It's got all the details of the crenellations, and what's important about it is the width. It's a good 5 foot thick. The way that it's formed is that there's an outer skin on either side, and within that a fill of rubble and mortar. And that provides a very solid core. This is exactly how they did it in the Middle Ages. And I'm very glad that I'm not standing here while the trebuchets are actually shooting.
The target wall is modeled on the outer walls of Harlech and Caerphilly, two of the best defended castles in Wales. Faced with the daunting task of taking a castle like Caerphilly, what siege tactics would an attacker adopt?
A castle like Caerphilly, like this one, presented an attacker with a knotty problem, because it's got layers of defenses with sandwiches of water between them. A bit like the layers of an onion. So an attacker arriving here would encounter the moat, a water defense, so that he couldn't mine underneath it without his trenches being flooded. His best bet, if he possibly can, is to take the place by surprise or by guile, to trick his way in, to get in before the garrison's ready for him. If he can't do that, he's then got to mount a formal siege. And ultimately, he'll starve it out. Gates had once been a castle's weakest point, but by this stage in history, they've become its strongest. They're defended by gatehouses. These are great, powerful towers with arrow slits in them, so that anyone attacking the gate is subjected to close-range fire. And there's a portcullis, which drops down just behind the attackers. And even if an attacker does manage to take the gatehouse, then he's got another moat, 2 more gatehouses, and he's got to do the whole rotten business all over again.
Meanwhile, rotten weather has besieged Castle Urquhart, and after a week of daily downpours, the trestles that support the throwing arm are ready to be raised.
Pull, pull, pull. How do you like that? Keep going.
At the top of the trestle, the throwing arm rotates on an axle that has to be both strong and exact.
and the counterweight, so it has to be fairly precise.
Marcus Brandt has taken on the job.
Well, we've got to address the issues of axles. We've got two sets of axles with this fixed arm, fixed counterweight machine. We've got the axles down here to carry the wheels, and we've got this more precise axle up here, which carries this 8 tons of weight and arm, and it has to be fairly precise. We've set up a great wheel lathe, which is a precursor to modern lathes. It's just a great big flywheel that's powered by muscle, and it turns this 10 by 10 down to an 8 by 8.
Marcus restores old buildings in Pennsylvania and has enthusiastically embraced the idea of using medieval technology.
It's a very medieval feel to the whole project. We've got all the trades going at once. We have the stonemasons busy. We got all the carpenters and the axes flying and the chips and the smoke and the mud. And boy, if it weren't for the jets flying overhead occasionally, you'd think you were in the 12th century.
Villages were often established next to the castle of a nobleman or the king.
English society was very hierarchical, with the king and his nobles at the top, and then the rest of society cascading down from that. Now, the castle wasn't just important militarily, they were an economic power as well. There were communities built up round the castle to supply it. And the castle provided protection as well. At their best, these noblemen were protectors. At their worst, they were often something rather like mafiosi, leeching off the local countryside. So living under the shadow of a place like this had advantages, but disadvantages too.
How you doing, Phil? You don't have too much there?
In order to position the heavy throwing arm, the timber framers place an A-frame above the trestles to support the pulley system, a standard medieval device. A block and tackle dramatically reduces the number of people required to pull on the ropes.
Now, block and tackle is a fairly simple device. It magnifies your pull. If I were to lift my own body weight with a single rope, I would have to pull down 200 pounds to lift my 200 pounds of body weight up. With this, I'm hooked up to this double sheaf pulley, and I've got 4 lines which share the load equally. So 200 pounds here is only 50 pounds on each one of these ropes. So to lift my 200 pounds up, I only have to pull 50 pounds here. Now, mind you, I have to pull 4 times as much rope, but it really works.
The next phase of construction is the most dangerous.